I'm Mr. Second Passport, and today I'm going to share why Ecuador may not be for you. I did want to give you the other side of the story, maybe what you're maybe not seeing on other YouTube channels, right? Ecuador is not ideal for a lot of types of people, right? So I wanted to share 19 quick types of people that Ecuador might not be right for. The first type of person that Ecuador is not ideal for are golfers, avid golfers, people who absolutely love golf. There's only currently 2022, 2023, one public golf course in all of Ecuador, and that's in the Manta area. I've played it myself. I do like golf personally, but it's not necessarily something that I can't live without. If it is something you cannot live without, maybe you should reconsider moving to Ecuador. Second type of person that might want to reconsider moving to Ecuador are avid hunters, right? Or gun enthusiasts, because the general population cannot own guns in Ecuador, and all the big game has pretty much been hunted out long ago in a place like Ecuador anyway, so there would be really nothing to hunt anyway. Number three type of person are maybe handicapped or disabled people, generally not mobile people, should probably reconsider moving to Ecuador just because the sidewalks are all uneven. Often there's very little handicap friendliness when they build the sidewalks in Ecuador, very little on-ramps and things on the roads, uneven sidewalks, open potholes. It's just, and a lot of hills. The cities have a lot of hills in them, especially in the highlands where most of the expats like to live to avoid, say, the heat of the coast. But it's really hilly, right? Is that something you want to deal with? Number four are light sleepers. This is another type of person that maybe should reconsider moving to a place like Ecuador or maybe Latin America in general. They just here don't respect your right to sleep in peace a lot. So it's something you have to get used to, or it has to be something that doesn't bother you, one or the other, or you might want to reconsider. The fifth one is you have to know thyself, right? Better than anyone else. That's for people that have weak stomachs. You know who I'm talking about. It might be talking about you or not. I may be talking about you, maybe not. But different types of food really affects you and loosens you up. You constantly have diarrhea and whatnot. If you're this type of person, you may want to reconsider moving to Ecuador because the food will probably mess you up consistently. The sixth type of person that probably should avoid Ecuador is someone who doesn't know even 10 words in Spanish and doesn't plan on learning. You should probably reconsider moving to a place like Ecuador because you're going to be frustrated. There's a lot of places in Ecuador where you're going to find yourself in the street with no one that speaks English. Unlike places like Asia or Europe, sure, you can get by with just English. The seventh type of person that should probably reconsider moving to Ecuador are people who need a job or employment just to make a living, right? It's kind of tough to move abroad and start your own business to make a living. That's going to take money too, right? So, I mean, if you really just need money just to get by, you're probably better off in your home country just working at a steady job. Once you have some savings, then you could try moving abroad and giving it a go and see if you can maybe start your own business abroad, because trying to find a job abroad in a place like Ecuador is really, really hard. Like teaching English, you're much better off in many places in Asia, where I've personally taught English, and you're often paid 2 or 3 times or 4 times more for the same job than you would be in Latin America in a place like Ecuador. Eighth type of person that should probably avoid moving to Ecuador at all costs are young families with like really small kids, several of them, because unless you plan on homeschooling them anyways, then fine. But if you don't, then the schooling situation in Ecuador is probably much worse than your home country. They have public schools here in Ecuador that are not that great, where you probably wouldn't want to send your kid in, and oftentimes they don't even have space for all the kids' seats that want to go to that school. So you're kind of forced to send them all to private school, and that can add up very quickly if you have multiple kids, whereas maybe in your home country often you can offer them a decent schooling for free. Bicyclists, I hate to say it, yeah, it's an up and coming sport here in Ecuador, but I like to bicycle, but it's just not very safe, right? The cars still don't respect bicycles all that much. So if you're a huge bicycle enthusiast, street road bike person, then you might want to reconsider moving to a place like Ecuador or Latin America in general, because a lot of the riding's just not that safe. Next type of person I should probably avoid Ecuador, and I meet them all the time, especially young people, are young people particularly, who want to enter the marijuana business, right? Growing, producing, whatever, distributing, I don't know. But I've met several of them, and I don't think moving to Ecuador is a great idea for this type of business, because you're better off just staying in the US. There's a lot of states that are legalizing this type of thing already. But here in Ecuador, the growing and producing is not legal yet. You have to understand that. And a lot of the distribution networks are already kind of in place in Ecuador, and I've already kind of seen this happen, where if you try to come in as a newcomer, you could have a very rude awakening from the people already in the business down here. So I mean, it's just not a good idea to even think about that business and coming to Ecuador. You'd be surprised. The next type of person I should probably avoid Ecuador are avid fishermen. There's just, it's all been fished out. You can fish here, but the streams, the lakes, I've tried fishing them all down here. Even the ocean, I went out on a fishing boat on the south coast near Puerto Cayo, a so-called fishing town. We went way out there, and all we caught was jellyfish, even with nets. I mean, you really have to go miles out in the ocean to catch anything these days on the Ecuador coastline. It's all been fished out. Next type of person, I happen to be one, is a skier or a winter sports enthusiast of some type. You may want to obviously avoid a place like Ecuador, because obviously you can't practice those activities here. The next type of person that should avoid Ecuador, if you really are avid shoppers, if you really get joy out of shopping and buying stuff, even just buying stuff online, you know who you are. A place like Ecuador is probably not for you. You can't even really buy on Amazon that easily down here. And just going shopping to the malls and stuff, you notice everybody's just kind of walking around the malls. Nobody has all these bags because nobody's buying anything, because the imported name brand goods are so expensive. So prohibitively expensive down here. There's just not much buying going on in the malls. People go to the malls just to hang out with their friends or family and maybe eat something in the food court, or on the coast just to kind of be in an air-conditioned place sometimes is the only reason they go to the mall, not to actually buy things. So if you're an avid shopper, you might want to reconsider moving to a place like Ecuador. The next type of person that might want to reconsider moving to Ecuador are car enthusiasts. You know who you are. Just the makes and models of cars in Ecuador are very reduced. There's like a handful. You can count on both hands how many models of cars there are in Ecuador almost. And almost all of those are Chinese-made Chevrolets and Kias. So I mean, there's just not that many makes and models to choose from due to the import restrictions and things. So if you're a real car enthusiast, you might want to reconsider moving to a place like Ecuador. The next type of person that probably should avoid moving to a place like Ecuador is someone who absolutely cannot fathom the thought of taking a cold shower, or someone who can't fathom the thought of being without electricity for a few hours, or someone who can't fathom the thought of being without water even for a few hours sometimes here and there. If the thought of that really bothers you, or internet, then you should probably abstain from moving to Ecuador. Of course, those things bother all of us, but if you really can't handle that, then Ecuador is probably not for you. The next type of person that probably should not move to Ecuador is someone who's already in kind of a shaky marriage. Generally, I've seen anyway, from almost a decade running a hotel here, that I met a lot of new arrivals, and I met them on their way out as well. of Ecuador. If you kind of have a shaky relationship, moving abroad will probably break it. If you're moving abroad with a partner or spouse who doesn't really want to go to that particular country, like in this case Ecuador, it also could be doomed right from the start. The next type of person that probably should not move to Ecuador are foodies. You know who you are. Like the cuisine in Ecuador, I personally love. Some people find it bland, the local food, I'll be honest. But why foodies should maybe abstain from moving to Ecuador is that in many places you don't really get a whole lot of international options. The exception to that might be a place like Cuenca, which has become very international the last 10 years or so. But other than that, certain parts of Quito and maybe Cuenca and certain parts of Guayaquil possibly, that's about it. The rest of the country, you're pretty much eating Ecuadorian or pizza.